Hi, everyone. Welcome to What Just Happened. I'm Christine Russo. Today, we welcome Astrid Wendlandt, founder and editor of Miss Tweed. Miss Tweed is a media and publishing house covering fashion and luxury. Welcome, Astrid. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. What an honor.
Thank you.
It's great to have you. Not everyone is aware of Miss Tweed, the media and publishing house that you founded and you're the editor. Please tell us a little bit about it so we can get an understanding of what you do.
Miss Tweed was launched because I felt that the industry needed an independent media because the fashion and luxury industry has become one of the pillars of the global economy, and you need to have a free flow of information. Today, if you look at most media, they depend on the advertising revenues they get from major brands. And therefore, they're never going to write anything that brands don't allow. And that's completely nonsensical because, as George Orwell said, journalism is printing something that somebody else doesn't want you to print. Everything else is public relations. I worked for Reuters, I worked for the FT. Now have 30 years of journalism behind me. I started when I was 20, basically, 21. And I felt there was a need for real in-depth investigative reporting. And I worked for the New York Times, I worked for Business of Fashion, I worked for Fashion Network, and I felt that I'd be much better off launching my own media and building a team than working for people I felt were not up to the level I wanted. We have a tough job as journalists. My team, we work under great conditions. In fact, one of my spiritual fathers is Karl Lagerfeld, and Karl would always say, we always work better in the best conditions. And for me, it's not only materially comfortable conditions, it's also a great environment where people encourage each other to get the best out of each other. I was very happy to launch Miss Tweed, but it was quite a leap of faith because I was also making a gambit thinking, okay, today news has become a commodity, a bit like water, electricity. People can get it for very low cost, if not for free. Therefore, my analysis was people are only going to pay if you give them value added, i.e. analysis, exclusive news that they're not going to read elsewhere. And since I launched Miss Tweed in June 2020, we've been trying to live up to this promise every Sunday. So we deliver to our subscribers news that they're not going to read elsewhere. And the feedback I'm getting is that we're doing okay.
Congratulations. One of your badge of honors is being blacklisted by Mr. Arnault for that accomplishment. Tell us about that.
Actually, it's not only Bernard Arnault, it's also Johann Rupert. In fact, Rupert is more aggressive than Arnault. So Arnault has blacklisted me, but still many people from LVMH subscribe to Miss Tweed. They don't invite me to shows, though sometimes it has happened. They do reply to emails. Richemont, on the other hand, do not let me enter anything that has to do with Richemont, like the Watches and Wonders. In 2021, Miss Tweed had just launched show in June, so that was in March. And I was a keynote speaker with the CEO of Parmigiani, and it was on the rise and rise of independent watch brands. And I registered to get accredited, and it was rejected. And so I had to do my conference via Zoom because Richemont had blacklisted me from Watches and Wonders and has continued to this day. The second year was even more hilarious. I had invitations from Rolex, from Chopard, from LVMH, and LVMH sends me the invitation. And then so I'm like, okay, so I organize all sorts of interviews thinking I've got an invitation, I can come out. And I show up at the gate at Watches and Wonders at the registration desk, and they say, sorry, your accreditation has been deactivated. In September last year, in 2024, I got into Richemont's annual shareholders meeting because I have a Richemont share. It was difficult to get in, but they couldn't stop me from getting in. And they couldn't stop me from asking questions. In fact, I encourage everybody to go on Miss Tweed official Instagram account and find that video because it's just hilarious. There was a person who recorded me asking the questions. And I didn't talk about Miss Tweed. I just wanted to be there as a shareholder. And because I didn't want it to be about Miss Tweed, I want it to be more about just my questions. And I started by saying, hello, I'm Astrid Wendlandt, I'm a shareholder. And then you have Johann Rupert who says, yes, Astrid, we know exactly who you are. And everybody, it was just a surreal moment. And I asked my 3 questions, and one was about, what are you doing in beauty? And he said, oh, sorry, it was a mistake to call it a beauty division. We're not going to create a beauty division. Okay, great. If I hadn't asked the question, nobody would know. My second question was about specialist watchmakers. I said, it seems that you don't need to have a CEO and the brands are being hamstrung by a corporate structure. Is this going to evolve? And he ducked the question. And the third, I said, so Richemont is a very successful group. Why do you feel the need to blacklist journalists? Why don't you ever answer any questions? And then he said, if you're going to criticize my men and myself, you cannot expect it to be invited for dinner. But he said about 3 times, you are welcome, Astrid. And he said in front of witnesses that he would give me a one-to-one chat so that we can go over our differences. And I said, look, if I've printed anything wrong, or you feel is unfair, or you feel you didn't get your voice across, please let me know. And let's discuss it. And he promised a one-to-one, but it never happened. So it means Johann is not a man of his word. Because I emailed him and he never replied.
I'm dying. This is killing me. This shareholder meeting was what year? When? Which quarter?
September 2024. I think it was the 9th or the 10th of September.
It's pretty recent.
Yeah.
What's the backstory? What caused him to take this position with respect to Miss Tweed?
Oh, it was from day one. But it took a little time to get everybody to, basically he would never put anything in writing, but I have witnesses where their managers said in town hall meetings, you are strictly forbidden from speaking to Miss Tweed, from subscribing to Miss Tweed, and people are even forbidden from liking my posts on LinkedIn or Instagram. That's also forbidden. So if that's not against freedom of speech, then I don't know what that is.
Okay, but you can't, there's no one story or one incident that...
No, it's a series. I wrote about how there were corporate governance issues at Richemont, and Richemont doesn't get fashion. That's just a fact now. Numbers speak for themselves. And and watches, really, there's a problem with the creativity and the ability for watch CEOs to grow their businesses. So basically, I was explaining to my readers that you've got Johann who says, oh, great campaign, fantastic. And then you'd have Jérôme Lambert say, no, we're not going to give you the money. So people were depressed at Richemont because they were trying to come up with ideas. And the spirit was very much risk averse. Let's not try anything new. Let's just stick to the old. It works for jewelry, but it doesn't really work in watches. And you see the results. Watch sales have been seriously down, also because of the market. But still, there's some watch brands that are doing better than others. Watches, it's not like fashion. You don't need to put out a new watch every year, or it's just that I felt that it was lacking the audacity that these brands had the means to express. So these things are not necessarily pleasant for Mr. Rupert to hear.
Okay, fair enough. So that leads me to my next question, which we've touched on, but I'll phrase the question anyway, and we'll see where it goes. Why do you believe it's important to challenge the narratives propagated by corporate PR and luxury? Luxury is clearly in a shift, consumer pricing pressure, value, and creative uncertainty. So the first part really is about your position as like the swimming upstream, the anti. You've been on the corporate media side. You've seen the sort of the end result of their efforts. It's not as clean and pure from a journalistic standpoint, and you're countering that. You're there to fix that problem. And why do
Well,
you think that's important in luxury?
the thing is, though, you can't blame them for it. What is a luxury brand? A luxury brand is a name that's selling you a dream, a glamorous lifestyle that you identify with or would like to identify with. And that justifies the price tag. And then they make high margins, billions and billions for people like LVMH, Richemont, and Kering and Chanel. So, of course, they will want to control that image, right? Because image is essentially what they're selling. If you've got somebody coming along and say, behind the facade, there's some pretty ugly things going on, that's going to dent their image. That's going to create blemishes they don't want to see and they want to erase. So that's if journalism is just saying it as it is, right? So I do say when brands do wonderful things, when they're very successful. I've written some very positive stories, for example, about Messika, the jewelry brand that's really firing on all cylinders, doing a great job, clear message, clear marketing, there's a coherence. Ralph Lauren, also great school, going from strength to strength, and it's really incredible what they've achieved because it's been going on for decades. They're more than 50 years, actually, so that's quite remarkable. So Miss Tweed is not about criticism, it's about saying when things are bad and things are good, but as they are. I don't have an agenda. I don't have anybody asking me to write anything. I spend a good half of my time, I'd say, killing news stuff that people give me, or I heard that, and I check it, and it turns out to be wrong. So I don't write things that just people told me. I write things that I'm pretty certain about because I've got one asset, it's my reputation. And I can lose it in 30 seconds, and I'm quite aware of that.
Do you mind if we dig into Ralph Lauren?
I think it's interesting. I think based on the history and the progression of certain brands, that Ralph Lauren is doing well because it's consistent, because it's coherent, because everybody in the company is singing from the same song sheet and they know what that content is. Miu Miu, same thing. Why is it the fastest growing fashion brand? Because it's consistent, its story is clear, it's this rebel schoolgirl kind of cool style that resonates with people, that's in tune with the spirit of the times. And their ad campaigns, their merchandising, their strategy is coherent and consistent. Now, if you want to take at one of the sick children of the luxury goods industry like Gucci, have you ever, I would advise anybody who follows luxury industry to look at the 3, 4, 5 last ad campaigns by Gucci. They have nothing to do with each other. You got one selling scarves, you've got another. In fact, I'm writing about this where I'm really looking at all these ad campaigns, and there is nothing that brings them together. There is no coherent narrative. So there's one about flora and silk scarves, one that's even with the red, the deep red, burgundy red, the Ancora campaign of De Sarno. You wonder, what the hell is that doing there? The guy left in February. You've got a campaign with people posing on a boat or by the sea, which is called the Lido campaign, where you have around there mindless sentences like the sea smells good, or and it looks very trashy. It really doesn't look luxury. You look at all of that and you think, why isn't there somebody who is making sure this all fits together? And what's also incredible is that the brand has retained the art director, the junior art director that Sabato had hired. So they didn't even find a new art director except for one campaign, the one about the scarves. But you just wonder, they should have used this transition time to go back to the basics, but maybe also still push some audacity, still do things. And right now, it's just a catastrophe, and it's the message is really blurred. It's very weak. And no wonder the sales are down 25% in the second quarter, in the half year, in fact, and the wholesale is down 50%.
It's such a great side-by-side analysis where I don't really know how much Ralph Lauren himself has to do with the day-to-day and the keeping on page, keeping on brand.
I think he has an oversight, but more importantly, he's trained people. They have the Ralph Lauren chip in the brain. They know what the story is, they know what the values are, they know they've done the groundwork. What do we stand for? What's our story? What are we about? What are our universe, the different atmospheres that stick to who we are? And it pays off.
What do you think the difference is, the playbook for staying on brand, being consistent, and achieving what Ralph Lauren, the company, has achieved, versus a Gucci as the example?
In fact, if you look at the turnover of people at Gucci versus Ralph Lauren, I think that says it all. I know a lot of people who've left Gucci in the past 2 to 3 years, and I know a lot of people have been at Ralph Lauren for 10, 20, 30 years. Ralph Lauren is a bit like Chanel and Hermes. You don't leave Chanel or Hermes, you die at Chanel or Hermes. You basically stay there until retirement. And if people stay, it means they're happy, it means they feel fulfilled, it means that they're enjoying their jobs and they're producing good results. I think there is as much pressure at Ralph Lauren as there is, say, at Chanel, a bit less at Hermes. Hermes, they're the least stressed out people because results are always excellent. We just saw it, sales were still up. I think it was 7% at constant, at 9 at reported, at current currencies and constant currencies. So basically removing the currency effect, but still it's growing, right? So meanwhile, Dior and Louis Vuitton are down 9%. So there's a high turnover there as well.
Can we use this as a segue to talk about this malaise with creative director as superstar, rock star? What are your thoughts on that?
One of the main problems with the luxury industry and for brands that have reached a certain size is that the stakes have become so high that nobody is ready to take any risks. So this means they will only hire super well-known designers or designers with a strong track record. Problem is there are not that many. I mean, we have this completely surreal situation now where you have the guy who was at Gucci now at Valentino, who's designing products that look like Gucci. You've got the Valentino guy who's coming to Balenciaga, so it's going to be looking a lot like Valentino. And you've got the Balenciaga designers now going to go look like Gucci, so Gucci's look a lot like Balenciaga. And I think this leaves customers thinking, are you taking the piss?
What does that mean?
Basically, it's a British expression. I love it. It means, do you think I'm a fool? They
Oh,
feel they've been taken for fools, yeah? Valentino, I wrote, it wasn't very nice, but it's very true. Valentino is about glamour, it's about femininity, it's about big flowing scarlet dresses, women dressed to kill. And Alessandro Michele is basically dressed up women. They make me think of the secretaries you'd see in Monty Python movies from the 1970s. So I feel that there's been very little oversight, for example, at Valentino, and in fact, the CEO has left. I was the first to report that. He said for health reasons, but he was effectively kicked out. And Gucci, I think Demna's going to do a good job reminding people of how provocative Gucci can be because he loves provocation. However, if I had some advice, it would be don't go too far in the provocation because I think that has lived its course. And I'm not sure people are really into provocation, into seditious designs. Sure, he's the guy who turned the IKEA bag and the Crocs into luxury items, but that was really taking us for fools, right? So it worked 5 years ago. I'm not sure it's going to work today. So my hope is that Demna's going to understand that, because he's a genius designer, but give us designs that make women look good. Because frankly, that's what motivates women. Yeah, it's to buy something that makes them look amazing. And they need to also feel that the product is of quality. And that's another issue, by the way, that I think we should discuss. I think right now there's a big pushback from consumers, not only because times are tough, not only because times are super uncertain. And I just read yesterday the headline that Trump was sending 2 nuclear submarines towards Russia after provocative remarks, and you wonder what's going to happen. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty, which affects the feel-good factor necessary to splurge on luxury goods. But I think the other thing is, as prices have risen so much that people, again, feel they've been taken for fools, it's just become silly money, and it's really become silly, right, to spend 10,000 or 11,000 euros on the Chanel 255 handbag, which, by the way, when I started writing about luxury goods in 2007, that same handbag was worth 1,850 euros. And back then I thought it was outrageously expensive. Now it's 10 or 11,000. And it looks cheap. The leather doesn't look so silky. The chain doesn't shine so much. This is a scam, and I think people are realizing that luxury goods are a scam. Plus, how can you be certain that this product you're buying has not been made by a poor Chinaman who's been working round the clock, sleeping on the premises, and paid whatever 15 euros an hour for a product that's going to be sold for 3,000 in a plush boutique? That, plus the lack of creativity that I've mentioned, the lack of audacity that we see from big brands, because they're too scared to take risks. So they always hire the same designers. So we always see the same things. And from an advertising point of view, if you look at the ad campaigns of the past 2 years, sorry, most of them follow the same recipe, i.e., celebrity plus handbag plus white pale background plus logo. Please give me 10 of those and I'll fall asleep immediately. So how are brands expecting to woo consumers at a time when people are tightening their purse strings, when they're putting out such boring ad campaigns, when it's always the same designers you're seeing out there? There's very little newness. And the problem with new designers is that they want to say too many things and they're not briefed well enough. I think that successful brands are those that know what they're about, they know what they want to say, and they stick to it. They don't suddenly decide, oh, caring with Gucci. Oh, Gucci needs to be about timeless elegance. So basically, they want to be like S or Chanel, right? But Gucci's always thrived when it was provocative, when it was edgy. So basically, what Pinot's tried to do is make a circle fit into a square. It doesn't work. Hence, the brand collapsed, the sales collapsed. And now we're hoping that Demna is going to be injecting some originality, authenticity, and more importantly, who's going to be supervising everything. And Miss Tweed was the first to report, they also need to get a new CEO, because obviously, from looking at the ad campaigns, Stefano Cantino is not up to the task.
So overall luxury, we know, is in a bad place, or a transitional place, with the musical chairs, with the creative directors that we saw throughout the spring. Maybe perhaps the fall will show a glimmer of, and certainly in times of uncertainty for the consumer, beautiful art can be an escape, and not necessarily purchasing it, but the inspiration and aspiration of it. The potential is there. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, potential's there, but I think right now that people are more into what we call accessible luxury brands. I think Coach and all these brands that have been having a hard time are going to be doing better. And if I was the CEO, I'd be like firing on all cylinders right now and advertising like crazy, because this window of opportunity is not going to come back. Because luxury brands are resting on their laurels and they've put off consumers. So it's an ideal occasion for accessible luxury brands. I'm talking about Coach, Kate Spade, these guys, Tommy
Oh,
Hilfiger, to really go out and regain market share they've lost to luxury goods consumers. Because luxury goods, of course, people don't necessarily buy the 5,000 handbag, but they might buy the small leather goods or the perfume. The aspirational consumer has disappeared for big luxury brands. The uber wealthy customer is, of course, still there and still has his or her purchasing power unaffected. But I think the aspirational consumer will not want to save to buy a Saint Laurent bag and would rather just indulge in a Coach handbag, for example.
it's just out of reach. And so they are staying with the Coach price point or Polen or something like this. So, the creator Lyas, Lyas.
Oh, isn't it the guy who did a video about I didn't get invited to Dior?
That's this video, but he also did a watch party. So he wasn't invited, so he went to one of
Yeah,
the
I know that. Yeah, the Dior. I didn't get invited to the Dior. I know, I saw, and he invited people to watch the show together. Yeah,
so I
which
wanted
I
to know,
thought was very smart. Yeah.
very smart, but now he's on his platform on TikTok, and he's very open. This is the style, the TikTok style. Brands are now doing watch parties. This is my idea. You stole it. You stole it. He's trying to do watch parties now for this coming fashion market for all the shows and looking for sponsors. I think in some way there's a through line
No, but
between.
it's great to have people like that. First of all, it adds a bit of lightness and a sense of humor, of which there is so little in the world today. So I applaud any initiative that can put a smile on our face, as times are sad indeed. That's what I think about it. And then the second, it's really funny because he's basically laughing at brands. They're taking themselves way too seriously sometimes, and they really need to loosen up.
I'm embracing the rebels.
One thing I need to say, the free spirit, the independent commenting on fashion and luxury is a very recent phenomenon. And when I launched Miss Tweed in 2020, they just didn't know how to deal with me. Most PRs, they're there to sell products, i.e., this product is amazing, look at that, and the whole history and the craftsmanship. And for that, perfect. But nobody was trained to answer difficult questions. Nobody. So they just froze. They're like, oh my God, we have no idea how to deal with that. So luxury brands are in a learning curve. And I think Miss Tweed and other media have been ruffling some feathers, and they're getting better now at controlling the message and at the ostrich with the head in the ground. That head is coming out sometimes. It does little sounds, but it goes back in. But it's better than 5 years ago when it would just, first it would just ignore our existence. And then when they realize that people read us a lot, they're like, okay, maybe we'll answer emails. And now the smart people realize they need to talk to us, but they're not that many. And people prefer not to talk than to talk, even off the record. And they don't understand that if they talk off the record, they have a better chance at controlling the story than if they don't talk. But it takes experience, and they're still very inexperienced dealing with tough questions. That's what I mean. Because for 50 years, they've had journalists they were basically writing what they were told to write in exchange for advertising revenue. Except for, say, Reuters, Bloomberg, the agencies, even the venerable Financial Times, the FT, it wouldn't have a network of correspondence if it wasn't for the fashion and luxury advertising. So do you think the FT is going to be the first publication to write about problems at Chanel? However, I was very surprised. A couple of weeks ago, I read stories in the FT about moral harassment, toxic environments at Moet Hennessy, about the Chinese immigrants making bags for, or not bags, but ready to wear for Laura Piana. With media, I have with Le Monde, the venerable Le Monde, with Les Echos, Le Temps,
Mhm.
Challenge, a couple of publications, Business of Fashion. I have a free subscription. They have a free Miss Tweed subscription. It means we can read each other's stuff then.
If I were a journalist covering retail and luxury for CNBC, and I have wind of something, I can call you for your input. They're going to want your quick thoughts for something that might be breaking.
I
That's
don't give that
why.
because subscribe. It's my business model. I've had that. I've had actually analysts, Wall Street analysts, who would call me and say, "What did your story say?" Because they didn't want to pay for the subscription. And I say, "Sorry, you're trying to call me so I can give you all the information for free?"
Okay,
Yeah.
forget Wall Street analysts because that's in their own class and they're not really in the business of.
Yeah, but news is a competitive business. Either you're first or you're not. And
But
if
if
I
you
have the news,
be invited on to CNBC to share your thoughts of what you got, this is a marketing to
yes,
drive.
sure, I get it. I get it. But it depends, really. It all depends. Once the news is up, because remember, my subscriber, why are they subscribing to Miss Tweed? Because they're the first to get the news.
I see. Okay.
And therefore, I'm happy to comment after that. I'm happy to give a bit of information, but I cannot give for free something that many other people have paid for.
Got it. Yes, I understand. Yeah. No, look, it's the changing time where and also what's great about being behind a paywall is you cannot get crawled by the LLMs.
I must say, I love getting emails from people who say, "Astrid, you make my Sunday," or "This was such a great story," or "I laughed so much when you wrote about this and that, and you were so spot on." It gives a meaning to everything I do. Miss Tweed is just like Reuters, just like the FT, fair, accurate, balanced reporting. And what does that mean? It means that I've tried everything I could to get the other side of the story in there. And I give them ample time. Sometimes I give them a week, sometimes 2 days. All right, if something's just is breaking and I'm on deadline, I say, "Look, it's now, please reply." But I really go out of my way to give them a chance to reply. And I've never had, by the way, I've never yet, touch wood, I've never been threatened with legal action. I know that many people have thought about it because I attack their ego, maybe. And there are a lot of oversized egos in the luxury goods industry, but in other industries as well. On the other hand, what's interesting is that I have built a relationship of trust with many key decision makers in the luxury goods industry. The other day, I was talking to a major luxury executive, and we were talking about a brand, and I said, "What do you think about this?" And he gave me his feedback, and it was so precious. And sometimes in my story, you read head of one senior luxury executive. It's actually one of the top 5 or top 10, or whatever, I should say top 12, right? But they're usually, because you're only as good as your sources. And if I have a doubt about anything I'm writing, that maybe I'm too soft or maybe I'm too harsh. Journalism, it's interesting. I compare it to a pie. So we're given a slice of information, and then you have to imagine the rest of the pie. So it's always a bit approximative. It's never because we're not in the company, we don't have all the details. So what I try to also put in my story is this I know, but also this I don't know, so that people don't jump to conclusions. So I think that's how I've built my readership, is that I've built a relationship of trust, not only with CEOs, but with my readers, because they get it. They know how we function. I'm not the only author, by the way. There's Catherine Lebrun, who writes about history of brands. There's the amazing Fabio Biceri, who used to work for Gucci, who's doing the Owl Vision brand advertising campaign strategy stories. I have freelancers writing for me. I have people doing research. So it's a team, Miss Tweed. I know that my name's often there, but I'm not the only one. I just put my name there, but sometimes I'm just rewriting something that somebody didn't want their name to appear. for example. Yeah. So
Are you the editor-in-chief? Are you editing their work?
yeah, I'm
Okay.
editing their work. But if they don't want their name on it, I'll just put mine on. I think journalism is just there to inform. And this is what's going on. This is what I know. This is what I don't know. And I let you make your own judgment. I think Miss Tweed stands for freedom of thought, freedom to criticize, freedom to ask tough questions, but also freedom to applaud, freedom to laugh. But I'm careful about making jokes, though. They can get me into trouble.
Yes, true.
I did a story about Gucci and the ad campaigns, which I was telling you about. We're running illustration with a guy who's in front of a board with the double G of Gucci,
Yeah.
and you've got people listening, scratching their heads, others who are leaving the room in despair. And they found me a great title. It's called Lost in Transition. That's what we're all about.
That's so much fun.
By the way, one thing I'd like to say is that I'm taking legal action against luxury groups and brands that keep circulating my stories for free without getting subscriptions. I've estimated, if you look at this, it's in the Miss Tweed website, you go on events, and Miss Tweed is 5 years old. I've estimated we've lost about 50,000 euros from people sharing our stories. The other day, I met somebody who left Louis Vuitton. She said my story about what was going on at the brand was read by more than 300 people.
So I saw your post about that. So let's take a second. I'll queue up the question and then we'll do like a formal discussion on it so I can include it. My understanding is that you have a big issue with your stories getting out without the paid subscription happening. How is this happening? Are they copy pasting it and sharing?
No, they do. So there are WhatsApp groups. Some people, a secretary puts together a PDF, and the PDF is shared on the intranet of the company or via email or via WhatsApp or Signal or Telegram.
Okay, so you're getting news of this and you just mentioned you're going to take legal action for the unlawful sharing of information.
It's called violation of intellectual property rights.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So when you're not paying the copyright, if you were a subscriber, you would know that at the end of each story, there's a paragraph that says that you cannot share this story without written permission from Miss Tweed Publishing. If we find out that you do, we will unilaterally cancel your subscription without any explanation.
Have you been doing that?
I've done it.
Okay.
And guess what? Nobody complained because they knew they were wrong.
Okay.
I've lost a subscriber, but frankly, I'd rather him tell others that his subscription was canceled. Do you know what I mean? Yes, I'm losing income, but I'd rather people know that we're doing that when we have evidence they've been sharing our stories. I think it's just fair, and also shows that we're not afraid.
That's a theme running through, Miss Tweed.
Don't call me the Joan of Arc of journalism, fashion journalism. It's hilarious.
More like the Joan Crawford.
There are 3 editors who edit my stories. There's one for English. There's one then in French who does the translation into French. And then sometimes there's another one who reads the whole thing. So at some newspapers, you don't get that many eyeballs on your stories before it goes out. So that's why it costs money. That's why I don't get it. People think that Claire Lode, my illustrator, should work for free. I should work for free. Explain. So you guys are fighting counterfeiting. You're fighting violation of intellectual property rights. But when it comes to creation of the mind in journalism, we shouldn't pay for it. So it means we shouldn't pay for books. We shouldn't pay for music. We shouldn't pay for videos. We shouldn't pay for anything that's a creation of the mind. But we should pay for a real Rolex, or we should pay for a real Dior. That we should pay, yeah. It's ironic. It's just very ironic. Because they, of all people, should know the value of creation of the mind and intellectual property rights, copyrights. Now, it was lovely to speak to you, and thank you for your time and for your brilliant questions and for your thirst of knowledge and curiosity, which I think are Also, basic qualities for good journalism. Curiosity, it all starts with curiosity, and then everything else follows.
Goes from there. Thank you so much, Astrid. And that is what just happened. I'm Christine Russo.